Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 40 in our drawing series, Drawing Techniques for Beginners. From last week's lesson, I've just progressed it a little bit more. I've still only been using my 2H pencil. So everything that you can see here is all been done with the 2H pencil. What I've started to do is I've just started to add some of those horizontal lines that you can see, which I guess are sort of shiplap planks going across there. And I've just tried to define some of these darker areas. So what I'm going to be concentrating on today is again, working in these darker areas. I'm going to start with the HB pencil and possibly work up to some 2B in some of these areas here. I've sharpened my pencils. I've made sure that I've washed my hands as always, and let's crack on. So let's start up here in this top window, just because I'm going to be able to keep my hand out of the way of this quite easily. If I start low down and then start working higher up, I'm going to just start to smudge it a little bit. So what we did last week was we started to define some of the darkest edges and some of the darker regions, the crevices underneath some of the overhang, some of the darker portions of the windows, and we just started to layer that 2H pencil down. Now this HB pencil is now laying down really smoothly. We've got a good coverage. The tooth of the paper is starting to fill up nicely with the graphite and clay mixture. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a lovely rich value and tone. If this is the first time you visited the channel, go and check out the rest of the videos. Like I say, we're on lesson 40 now. And it only seems in the blink of an eye actually when I started this series. And basically what I wanted to do was try and teach you some of the techniques that I've learnt over the last 3 and a bit years now, and sort of try to put them into a coherent series of lessons. It was one of the most useful tools that I certainly found when I was drawing, and that was drawing along with somebody. You kind of having your hand held and guiding you through the process, and I can remember spending hours doing exactly what I hope that you guys are doing right now, and just listening and repeating the videos and going over them and pausing them. But I've picked up quite a few techniques and a few ideas that certainly have worked for me, and have given me a better understanding of how to create realistic drawings. It was realistic drawings and realism that really caught my eye when I decided, I guess I stumbled across a few videos on YouTube of some art tutorials, and it was the realistic work that really caught my eye, and it was something that I wanted to try and achieve myself. So these techniques are really trying to get you to understand how to draw realistically. Now, if you then want to go and turn your hand to painting or to working in colour, a lot of the principles that I'm showing you still apply. If you look at any good artist, whether they are a painter or an abstract artist, most of them, they all can draw with pencil. And if you can make something look realistic with just using a pencil, then when you do start to open up your materials that you're using, you start widening and broadening your materials that you use, you're going to be able to still apply those same rules and have something that looks fantastic, hopefully. So if you haven't checked it out, go and check out the rest of the videos. Obviously we're on 40. The first 6 or 7 go through some basics, some pencil skills that are really quite important. I use something called a tapered stroke throughout my drawings, which is what I'm using now, and I go through all of that. If you've not joined our Facebook group, it's called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginner to Pro. Come and join us. We're a good group. We share our work on there. We share our progress. I post all of the videos on there once they're released. So I'm quite happy I'm starting to define some of those dark areas. I'm going to come into this window area now. Now, one of the concepts that's really important, and it's something that I try to stress and get across to you as much as I can, and you will hear me repeating this over and over, is try and figure out where the darkest areas are in the patch or the part that you're actually drawing. There's always going to be something that's dark. There's always going to be something that's slightly lighter, even within your darkest portions of a portrait or a landscape in this case. So as I'm looking at this door, I'm trying to find the darkest areas, and generally speaking they are towards the furthest to reach edges. It's been fantastic seeing some of your progress shots over on the Facebook group. I've really enjoyed looking at some of the past lessons that we've done. I've seen a few people starting out with some of the barrels and the spheres, and even some of the patchwork, and it's nice to just revisit that and have a look at the progress that some of you are making, which is wonderful. And it's very refreshing to be part of an art group or art community that isn't full of spam and criticism and political posts and people arguing over whether what somebody's posted is art or not, and people putting up work that isn't theirs. And I'm happy to say that, being the single moderator on the group, I don't have an awful lot of reported posts and things like that. So thanks once again for keeping the group adult and grown up and for what it was designed for. I mean, I started this with really no expectations. I thought we might have a couple of hundred people participating, within a few months, and I'm blown away really by how many people have joined the group and how many people are continuing with the lessons and the techniques that I've been trying to show you. So thank you so much for that, and your kind words of encouragement really do. They just really help, with motivating, and it's nice to see somebody's taken something that you've tried to get across, a message that you've tried to convey, and turned it into something that's tangible and real. I've seen some fantastic drawings of the baby recently over on the group that we did, which was one of the first actual full drawings that we did. So I'm going to start working in this left side over here. I'm always going to try and keep this drawing orientated the best way for you to see, but don't be afraid to turn your paper around and really move the page around so that you can use your best stroke. And for me, my best stroke is a downward stroke. I know in the video it looks as though what I'm doing is scribbling, what some people would call shading, but really all I'm doing is I'm pulling the pencil down and then taking the pencil off and I'm putting it back on, and it's that continuous pulling action down towards me. That's what my tapered stroke is. But if you're unfamiliar with it, go and revisit some of the videos. If you have a look at the top of the YouTube channel in the playlists, there's a playlist called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginner to Pro, and all 40 videos are in there now. So when you've got a spare half an hour, just go and have a look. And I can remember about 6 months into my drawing, I sort of reached a plateau and my work wasn't getting any better. And I went back and revisited some of the fundamental skills that I'd learnt from various artists and various teachers, and just almost went back to basics. And I realised there were certain things there that I'd missed out and almost wasn't ready to hear. I think that part of your journey is as you progress, something that may have been insignificant at the start, a comment, a technique, a way of doing something, the way that something was said, it doesn't hit home. But as you progress as an artist, and I guess it's true with most things in life, but as you progress and your skills progress and you start to understand things better yourself, those insignificant comments and techniques that initially you didn't pick up on, all of a sudden make complete sense and everything becomes clear. So I remember mentioning in last week's lesson, or the last lesson, that this door here really epitomises everything that we're trying to create and everything that I'm trying to teach you. Now, what we have around the top and the left-hand side of this door is a very dark place, and it fades out towards the middle of the door, and that in itself is the skill that I'm trying to teach you. If you want realism, the way that light works is we don't have these harsh edges when the light is unobstructed, and it's called a gradient. So I really want to try and capture that in this this area here. Now I understand I need a lot more value in there, and I am going to definitely go up to, you know, maybe even a 6B in those areas. So don't be fooled into thinking that we've gone dark enough already. We haven't gone anywhere near dark enough in any of these areas. It's very easy to fall into that trap, and I do remember earlier on in the week looking at somebody's drawing. I think somebody posted a picture, I think it was of the baby that somebody had been doing, and they were concerned that they were going too dark. Now what happens in the initial stages of your drawing is, because there's so much white, any stroke on the page, whether that be with a 2H paper or a 2H pencil or an HB pencil, is going to look very, very dark in contrast to the bright white, and that scares people off sometimes. So what I would say to you is, don't be afraid to go darker, and as you build the value up around the rest of the drawing, you absolutely will get to a stage where you realise that you are going far too light and being far too cautious with your drawing. And once you grasp that, and I would say that was something that took me a couple of years. I look back at some of my drawings now from a year or two ago, and they look very washed out. And what I mean by that is, I developed a technique where everything was sort of the same value. We had some slightly lighter values in the highlighted areas, but I was always very, very cautious to go dark in the very dark areas. And what I had, you know, a realistic looking drawing, and something that at the time I was very happy with. But I look back now, and there's certain areas that I really would try and ramp up the contrast if I was to do that again. And maybe that's another video that we should be making, where I do go and revisit some of my older drawings and just critique them myself and have a look at the areas that I can improve on, because I think we can all learn a lot from that. So this top corner up here now, we have got some darker shadows underneath I guess they're almost called the eaves of this part of the building. Now what I've also done as I finished up last lesson is I started to put in these horizontal slats. Now as long as I keep building my value up in a vertical fashion here, I'm going to keep that texture under there, so I'm not damaging the texture that I've built up under there. And I can gradually build that up while still keeping a hint of the underlying texture and the structure of this building. And these textures that we've worked so hard to create initially are going to stay with us as we develop the value in the rest of the area. So I'm wanting to try and create a nice smooth transition here. And one of the things that I do say about drawing realistically is, when you go from dark to light, you want that to be as smooth as possible. So spend time layering. Layering is the key. And I really am pressing very, very lightly with the pencil. This is, you know, I'm almost not holding the pencil. It's just resting in my hand. And what that does is it allows me to maintain the tooth of the paper, and I'm not damaging the tooth of the paper. I'm not embedding graphite deep down into the tooth of the paper. This then allows me to take the graphite out at will. If I need to completely redo an area, which rarely happens if we work in this methodical technique or this methodical fashion, we can very quickly identify an area that needs to be corrected, and we can work that area before it becomes critical and we have to start again, heaven forbid. Now in the early days there was lots of drawings that I used to start over. But that was mainly down to me using techniques where I'm using blending stumps and I'm bearing down onto the tooth of the paper, and then realising that I've made a mistake and I'm unable to then take that graphite out. So again, just working in these darkest regions and the surrounding areas where the light is struggling to get to, they're going to be my darkest zones. So I'm just laying some graphite down there first and then fading out, and that means that they're always going to remain the darkest areas. So as I lay a 2H down, or sorry, a 2B down into that area, it's going to remain darker than the surrounding areas, and that's what we want to keep. We're building the drawing up gradually. We never work one area to completion. We gradually work our way up through the range of pencils. And that way we can keep a nice control over our drawing, and we can find that we reach the point where we're happy with the drawing. I've said in a lot of the videos that most of my drawings I finish in a session that I didn't really think that I would finish in, or I had no expectations that this was going to be the final session. It just sort of happens as I'm building up the layers and the dark points and the contrast in certain areas. I take a look at it and I go, I'm actually happy with that now. I'm finished. Now what also happens is you come back to it a day later or later on in that day or that evening, and you can see a couple of areas that you need to tweak, but the overall composition of the drawing kind of creeps up on you. And that's learning this method. It's a wonderful feeling. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to my 2H pencil, and I'm just going to then start to pull out some more value into the white of the paper. So I'm now just going to gradually bring the 2H down and away from the HB and just feather some more value. All of this is going to be covered. By the time we finish this, this entire drawing is going to be covered with value. There are going to be, possibly, bearing this area, anything that's anywhere close to being left white. I'm still going to have value in there, but that's going to be the lightest area, so we might have just 2H in that zone being taken out with the needed eraser and reapplied, but we'll get to that in due course. So for now, I'm just, again, lightly feathering this 2H pencil down to give me a gradient. So I've gone darker in here with the HB. And as we fill more of this area, you're then going to realise that actually we haven't gone very dark at all. And then we're going to add some more HB in these darker areas, and then we're going to bring in the 2B. Until we've got a vibrant looking drawing. One of the really important tip, you'll very rarely see me sharpening my pencils. Now the first reason is because I'm not pressing on hard. That's the quickest way to damage the lead. Second thing is I keep turning my pencil in my hand every few strokes. And what that does, it has what we call a self-sharpening element to it. I've had these pencils now, the ones that I'm using, for well over 2 years. I haven't had to go and buy any more. I have got some more. I haven't used them yet. As you can see, some of these, so for example my 4B is actually very, very short. I'm almost going to need a new one of those soon, but although art is not the most expensive of hobbies, particularly if you're just working in graphite. I know that painting and oil painting and things like that can become rather expensive. Maybe even marker work, if you're using things like Copic markers, can become expensive, but as a graphite artist it's not the most expensive pursuit. But if we can save money and save your pencils in the process as well, then I'm all for that. I'm just bringing in a little bit of value into this area here. Let's give that a small brush now, just to bring some of the excess graphite into some of those lighter areas. And I like to use the brush. I don't like to overuse it, particularly in portraits of people's faces and things like that, because I like to keep that texture of the tooth of the paper intact, and I just think sometimes you can tell when it's been overbrushed. But any soft brush, any makeup brush will do, just to pull some of that, working from the dark areas again into the lighter areas. And you'll be very surprised actually just how much graphite does move around. So I'm going to come back now with my the HB pencil, and I'm just going to start to work these darker areas again. And because I'm never going to the limit of the pencil, I could press down much harder with this and get a very, very dark mark with my HB pencil, but I'm not doing that. I'm gradually bringing the value up. It means that I can still get darker by layering this HB pencil over the areas that we've already got HB. I've now got another layer of 2H in there from where I've brushed and from where we started again with the 2H pencil. And now I'm going over with another layer of HB. And then we're going to apply some 2B to that area, and we're going to go through that same process. And it's these layers like pancakes. I'm crisscrossing. It's important to keep turning the paper as well, because what we don't want is we don't want these lines all the same way. Over time I've started to manage to get my lines very close together so there aren't very many gaps in there, but I see a lot of people when they're starting out, their gaps are quite big in between each of their tapered strokes. Now you can practice getting them closer together, and that's something that I would suggest doing. But if you are chopping and changing the direction those strokes are going in, you're going to be able to get away from that liney effect anyway. We're almost creating a cross hatch. So if all of my lines were going this way and we've got gaps in between them, we're going to see that. But if I put my next layer this way and then a layer this way and a layer this way, over the time that I'm taking to do the drawing, I'm building up a nice smooth layer of value, a layer of lines, and that then means that I don't have to go in with a tortillon or paper stump, Q-tip, anything like that, because all that does really is it just pushes the graphite down into the tooth of the paper. So I'm cautious now that we are sort of hitting that half an hour mark, and I like to keep these videos down to about half an hour. Sometimes I'm slightly over. So what I want you to continue doing is continue working with your HB pencil in the darkest areas, starting to bring the value down with the 2H pencil as well. Use your brush. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to just start to put in some of these slats in this area here that we did in this zone. I'm going to use the Mono Zero eraser as well to take out a few of those slightly lighter looking boards. You might not be able to see them on the video on the reference that I've got here, but if you actually look at the photograph, we've got some lighter slats in there. We'll go into a little bit more detail with those as we go through sort of the next couple of lessons, I would say. But continue adding some more value. Don't go too far with it. Don't go rushing into using the 2B pencil. We're going to build these values up gradually. Keep turning your paper. Don't forget to post your progress on the group. If you've not joined the group yet, go and do that now. I really appreciate a like on the video. It makes a huge difference to the channel when you guys are giving them likes. Don't forget to subscribe and turn the notifications bell on. That means you're never going to miss a video when they drop, which I'm trying to get to 2 a week. We're doing Tuesdays and weekends, so Tuesdays and Saturdays it's been recently. If I can up that, I will do, because I know some of you are really powering on with some of the lessons. So I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to work again with the HB in some of these darker areas, and I'll just bring the darkness up a little bit using those 2 pencils, and then next week we're going to start with the 2B pencil. So thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel and the Facebook group. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.